You need
Honey,
to calm
the
down, ma'am.
economy
There's no
line
need
is
to
over
shout.
there.
Oh.
This is for our priority
I will
guests.
not calm down. This is
The words
outrageous.
didn't slip out by accident.
You need
They
to
were
go to
delivered
gate
like a verdict,
C-27
casual,
for your
practiced,
connecting flight.
dripping with a syrupy, condescending sweetness that hung in the air like a slap across the face.
Execute
Patricia
protocol
Weldon, gate
Obsidian.
agent for Horizon
Air.
Airlines Flight
Immediate.
842, didn't even glance at the phone
We're losing
screen
everything.
showing the first-class
It's all
boarding
gone.
pass. Her judgment was carved in stone the moment she saw the black woman in plain clothes
How much
standing
longer
before
until we
her.
land?
The air in
We should
Terminal
be there
4
in
of
about
Los
20
Angeles
minutes.
International Airport swirled with the familiar scent of tension-stale coffee jet fuel and the sweet aroma of overpriced cinnamon rolls from a nearby kiosk.
You
A
need to
symphony
calm
of
down,
chaos
ma'am. There's no
played
need to
in the
shout.
background. Frantic clatter of rolling
I will
suitcases
not calm
with
down.
broken
This
wheels.
is outrageous.
Garbled announcements cutting through conversations. The piercing wail of a toddler denied a third bag of potato chips. In the midst of this manufactured pandemonium stood Dr. Olivia Harrington, a portrait of serene calm. To the casual observer, she was utterly unremarkable. She wore simple dark gray joggers made of a soft, technical fabric, a plain black long-sleeved shirt, and comfortable-looking but expensive on-cloud sneakers. Her hair was pulled back into a neat, practical bun, and the only piece of jewelry on her person was a simple, elegant silver watch on her left wrist, a timepiece that quietly measured seconds with the same precision its owner measured her words. There was no flashy designer handbag, no ostentatious display of wealth. She looked like a yoga instructor, or perhaps a university professor on her way to a conference. What Patricia Weldon couldn't possibly know was that in exactly 20 minutes, the woman she had just dismissed would execute a corporate protocol that would ground Horizon Air's entire fleet and cost them billions. As a young girl in pink sneakers darted past Olivia's expression, softened briefly into a gentle smile, the child's mother called after her. Emma stayed close, and Olivia's eyes followed the little girl with a momentary warmth. Then, as she turned back to face Patricia, her expression reset to that same measured calm, her eyes studying the gate agent's face with scientific detachment, taking in every detail of the interaction, the assumption, the tone, the casual prejudice wrapped in customer service veneer. The terminal buzzed around them, a hive of activity and noise that seemed to fade into the background as this small moment of judgment unfolded at Gate 44B. Neither woman knew it yet, but this brief exchange would ripple outward with consequences that would transform an industry and make headlines across the country. Standing beside Olivia, fidgeting with the strap of his laptop bag, was Marcus Reed. At 26, bright-eyed, and just 6 months into his role as Olivia's executive assistant, he still existed in a state of perpetual awe of his boss. He'd seen her dismantle belligerent corporate attorneys with a single, perfectly phrased question. He'd watched her charm a skeptical board of investors into funding a project everyone else deemed impossible. But he'd only ever seen her in the tailored armor of a boardroom. Seeing her like this in travel clothes, blending into the tapestry of everyday life, was a new experience. Marcus had his own quirks, a habit of adjusting his glasses when nervous and compulsively organizing items in straight lines. Even now, his boarding passes were perfectly aligned with the edge of his phone case. Flight 842 to New York's JFK is now ready for pre-boarding. A voice crackled overhead. "That's us, Marcus." "Let's go," Olivia said, taking a calm sip of her water. She checked her silver watch, a gift from her father when she graduated medical school, with a subtle glance that spoke of a lifetime of precision. They were flying Horizon Air, a major carrier with whom Harrington BioMedical Systems had an exclusive 9-figure annual contract. Her company was their single largest corporate account on the West Coast. This contract wasn't for executives flying to meetings. It was for the core of her business. Harrington BioMedical shipped irreplaceable life-critical materials, cryopreserved organs for transplant patient-specific cancer treatments with a shelf life of only a few hours, and rare radioactive isotopes for advanced medical imaging. Horizon Air's cargo division was, for all intents and purposes, a subsidiary of Harrington BioMedical's will. Every Horizon Air employee who handled cargo was trained on Harrington's proprietary protocols. The partnership was a deep, intricate, and immensely profitable one for the airline. Olivia and Marcus held first-class tickets. It was a non-negotiable company policy for any employee on a cross-country flight involving a live delivery as this one did. In the cargo hold of this very plane secured in a state-of-the-art bio-cradle transport unit was a pediatric donor heart destined for a 7-year-old girl at Mount Sinai in New York. The surgery was scheduled for the moment they landed. The margin for error was 0. The bio-cradle wasn't just a container, it was a miniature life support system. Inside a proprietary perfusion solution mimicked the conditions of the human body delivering oxygen and nutrients to the heart tissue while removing waste. Microprocessors monitored every cellular parameter, making minute adjustments to maintain perfect homeostasis. The case could survive submersion impact, even brief radiation exposure. Olivia had designed it herself, understanding that seconds mattered and perfection wasn't optional. As they approached the gate, Marcus noticed Dr. Harrington subtly changed not her demeanor, which remained relaxed and unassuming, but her focus. Her eyes scanned the environment, the way the gate was managed, the efficiency of the boarding process. She observed everything with the same precision she applied to her revolutionary logistics systems. This wasn't just a flight. It was a critical link in her company's mission to save lives. "Our connection time is optimal," she noted quietly to Marcus. "The ground team in New York is already prepping for immediate transfer to Mount Sinai. Dr. Sharma will begin final surgical preparations when we reach cruising altitude." The girl waiting for this heart had been on the transplant list for 11 months. Her name was Sophia Martinez. Olivia never referred to recipients by name. It was a professional boundary she maintained, but Marcus had seen her review the case file earlier that morning. He knew that this particular delivery carried even more weight than usual, if such a thing were possible in their line of work, where every shipment could mean the difference between life and death. They approached the gate where 2 distinct lines were forming. On the right, a long snaking queue for the main cabin was already swelling with impatient travelers. On the left, a short sparse line was marked by a plush blue rope and a sign that read, "Priority Access First Class Military Personnel and Horizon Gold Members." Olivia led the way to the priority line. There were only 3 other people in front of them. Patricia, the gate agent in her late 40s with tired eyes, and a name tag that read, P. Weldon, was scanning boarding passes with a practiced weary motion. Her smile was a thin, painted-on line that didn't reach her eyes. She had a habit of tapping her acrylic nails on the scanner between passengers, tap, 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 like a timer counting down her patience. "Next in line, please," she called the customer service lilt in her voice as artificial as sweetener. When it was Olivia's turn, she stepped forward and held out her phone, the digital boarding pass glowing on the screen. Patricia didn't even look at the phone. Her eyes flickered over Olivia's simple attire from her sneakers up to her unadorned face, and a faint, almost imperceptible sneer tightened her lips. "Honey," she said, her voice dripping with that syrupy, condescending sweetness. "The economy line is over there." She gestured with a flick of her wrist toward the massive queue on the right, not even bothering to make eye contact. "This is for our priority guests." The word honey hung in the air, a small casual insult designed to put Olivia in her place. Marcus's face flushed with indignation. He immediately stepped forward, ready to intervene. "Excuse me." She's in Olivia put a hand gently on his arm, a silent command to stand down. Her expression didn't change. She remained placid, her gaze fixed on Patricia. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't protest. She simply held her phone out, the first-class designation clearly visible on the screen. Patricia sighed a gust of theatrical impatience. "Look, honey, we've got real passengers waiting. If you don't have a priority boarding pass, you need to move to the other line and let these people board." She still hadn't looked at the screen. Her judgment was made, and in her mind, it was final. The woman in the joggers did not belong here. Another gate agent, a younger man with a badge reading Tyler Reynolds, leaned over. "Need help with this one, Patricia?" he asked, eyeing Olivia with the same dismissive glance. "Economy's getting backed up anyway." "Just another one who doesn't know her place," Patricia replied, just loud enough for Olivia and nearby passengers to hear. "You'd think they'd learn to read the signs." Tyler nodded knowingly. "Happens every shift. Always the same type, too." Olivia remained silent, still holding her phone out. The screen clearly displayed First Class, Seat 2A, along with her name, Dr. Olivia Harrington, and her Horizon Platinum status. "These tickets are expensive," Patricia added, her voice rising slightly with impatience. "I'm sure you've made a mistake. People like you usually book basic economy." The man behind Olivia, a portly gentleman in a shiny suit, huffed impatiently. "Can we get a move on? Some of us have connections to make." Patricia took this as her cue. She looked at Olivia with hardened eyes. "Last time, miss. The back of the line. Now." The dismissal was total. It was a judgment not just on her clothes, but on her race, her gender, her very presence in that space. In Patricia's world, power looked a certain way, and Dr. Olivia Harrington did not fit the description. "Security will escort you if needed," she added, her voice dropping to a more threatening tone. "We have real passengers waiting." Tyler leaned in again and whispered to Patricia, but loud enough for Olivia to hear. "These people always think they're entitled to first class just because they have a few dollars." Olivia's silver watch caught the fluorescent light as her hand remained steady, still holding out her phone. The second hand ticked forward with the same measured calm as its owner. From 3 people behind in the priority line, a young Hispanic woman named Sofia Martinez had already raised her phone. "This doesn't seem right," she whispered to her boyfriend, adjusting the camera angle to capture the interaction. Her social media account, with its modest 5,000 followers, was about to become the unexpected chronicle of a corporate implosion. "Are you seeing this?" she murmured as she started recording. "Complete discrimination happening right in front of us." "She clearly belongs in first class," a woman in a business suit murmured to her colleague. "I can't believe this is still happening in 2025. "Rules are rules." The portly gentleman behind Olivia huffed, checking his Rolex impatiently. "Some people just don't understand protocol. If she has a first-class ticket, why doesn't she just show it properly?" Olivia's gaze never wavered from Patricia's face. The air around her seemed to still. The ambient noise of the terminal faded into a dull roar. Marcus could feel the temperature drop, a sudden, inexplicable chill in the air. His boss, the woman who could command boardrooms with her quiet intensity, was focusing that entire intensity onto this one oblivious gate agent. A young father with his daughter looked uncomfortably between Olivia and the gate agents. "Dad," the girl said loudly enough for several people to hear, "why are they being mean to that lady?" The father hushed her, but not before Patricia shot them an irritated glance. An elderly couple exchanged glances. The woman shook her head slightly, lips pressed together in disapproval, though whether at Olivia or Patricia wasn't immediately clear. "This isn't right," the elderly woman said firmly. "Check her boarding pass properly. Ma'am, I know how to do my job." Patricia snapped back her customer service veneer, cracking slightly. Sophia zoomed in on her phone, capturing Patricia's dismissive expression and Olivia's composed face. "I'm going to tag Horizon in this," she whispered. "Their customer service should see how they treat people." Horizon Air fail. Marcus stood rigidly beside Olivia, his face a storm of emotions. As her assistant, he had been trained to anticipate her needs, to smooth her path, to ensure her valuable time was never wasted. Yet here he was, helpless in the face of this blatant disrespect. He wanted to pull out his company ID to explain exactly who Dr. Harrington was to watch the color drain from Patricia's face when she realized her colossal error. But Olivia's hand on his arm kept him still. The growing tension at the priority check-in was starting to draw more attention. Several passengers in the main line had noticed the confrontation and were watching with undisguised curiosity. One man had taken out his phone and appeared to be recording as well. The tableau held for a moment longer, Patricia radiating smug authority, Tyler backing her up with his practiced customer service smile that didn't reach his eyes, and Olivia standing perfectly still, the eye of a hurricane that no one else could yet see forming. Slowly, deliberately, Olivia lowered her phone. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She didn't show Patricia the boarding pass that would have proven her right. The opportunity for that had passed. A line had been crossed, not of airport procedure, but of fundamental respect. Instead, she unlocked her phone with a flick of her thumb. Her fingers moved with practiced speed, tapping out a short, cryptic message. She then navigated to her contacts, found the name Catherine Rivera, COO, and pressed send. Then she did one more thing. She took a single step back from the priority line, a silent concession. She turned to Marcus, her face as calm and unreadable as a deep lake. "Change of plans, Marcus," she said, her voice even and quiet, yet carrying the weight of a dropped anchor. "We're not flying today." Patricia watched her go, a smug little smile playing on her lips. Next passenger she called cheerfully, as if celebrating a victory. She had won. She had kept her line pure. She turned to the next passenger, oblivious to the fact that she hadn't just insulted a passenger. She had lit the fuse on a corporate bomb, and the silent gesture of a single text message was the spark. The shockwave was coming. Marcus followed Dr. Harrington, confusion evident on his face, but the heart he began in a hushed, urgent tone. "We'll still reach Sophia." Olivia finished for him, her pace unhurried as they moved away from the gate. "Trust me." The text message that left Dr. Olivia Harrington's phone was deceptively simple. It contained only 5 words: "Execute protocol Obsidian." Horizon Air. Immediate. As they walked, Olivia's demeanor changed subtly. The calm remained, but there was now a focused intensity radiating from her. This wasn't anger. It was something more controlled, more purposeful. She was no longer a passenger who had been denied boarding. She was the CEO of Harrington BioMedical Systems, making a critical operational decision. Dr. Harrington Marcus ventured, struggling to keep up with her purposeful stride. "I don't understand. What about our flight?" "The delivery timeline is being recalculated as we speak," she replied, checking her silver watch, the timepiece that had been with her through medical school, through her first failed transplant delivery, through the founding of her company. "Protocol Obsidian includes automatic activation of our emergency transport contingencies. Catherine will handle the logistics. Our focus now is ensuring the heart reaches Sophia without delay." They reached a quieter area of the terminal near a Hudson News store. Olivia stopped and turned to face her assistant. "What you're about to witness, Marcus, is why we build redundancies into every system, why we never leave ourselves vulnerable to a single point of failure, whether that's a mechanical issue, a weather delay, or a prejudiced gate agent." Marcus supplied his voice low. Olivia's expression remained neutral, but her eyes held a steely resolve. "Human error in all its forms," she corrected diplomatically. "Intention is irrelevant when the outcome affects patient survival." She glanced at the departure board where Flight 842 still showed on time. Not for long, she knew. The digital dominoes were already falling, triggered by 5 simple words sent from her phone. In the complex web of corporate partnerships and contractual obligations, she had just pulled a thread that would unravel the entire fabric. The silver watch on her wrist caught the light again, tick, 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 counting down to consequences. In San Francisco, at the global headquarters of Harrington BioMedical Systems Chief Operating Officer Catherine Rivera was in a meeting finalizing a new European logistics route. her trademark red-framed glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed the final numbers. "We'll need to increase capacity by 15% in Munich," she was saying when her phone, which was always on her person and set to a specific vibration pattern for messages from Olivia, buzzed discreetly in her pocket. She excused herself with her standard phrase, "Duty calls people her face a mask of professional neutrality." She stepped into the hallway and read the message. Her blood ran cold. "Dios mío," she whispered the Spanish phrase slipping out in her shock. Protocol Obsidian was a name that struck a unique blend of dread and respect into the senior leadership at Harrington BioMedical. It was a corporate doomsday switch. It was the digital equivalent of a submarine captain turning the launch key. It was a pre-planned, fully automated, catastrophic severance of ties with a major partner. It was designed for scenarios of gross negligence or catastrophic failure, a plane crash, a massive data breach, a complete breakdown in contractual obligations. It had been designed by Olivia herself, but it had never not once been used. It was the company's nuclear option. Catherine's mind raced. There must have been a crash, an explosion, a critical cargo loss. She immediately pictured the pediatric heart on Flight 842. She sprinted back to her office, her red heels clicking rapidly against the marble floor, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Gabriella," she yelled to her assistant, "get me the real-time status of Horizon Air Flight 842 from LAX and get the organ transplant team at Mount Sinai on a priority line. Now." She sat at her terminal, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She brought up the Protocol Obsidian dashboard. A stark black screen appeared with a single prompt. "Confirm execution. Horizon Air, HZN. Authorization Harrington." Catherine took a deep breath. Olivia's command was absolute. There was no questioning it. Her job was to execute and manage the fallout. She typed her own authorization code and hit enter. The screen flashed red once, then shifted to a series of executing commands, short, precise, ruthless. The system executed. Precise, ruthless, unstoppable. First priority, secure the heart. A retrieval team alert flashed green as the nearest available unit acknowledged receipt and began moving toward LAX cargo terminal. Second priority, alternative transport. Private aviation partners received encrypted booking requests with medical clearance codes. Third priority, financial severance. The banking system acknowledged termination protocols and began withdrawing funds, canceling authorizations, and processing chargebacks. Not everything went perfectly. 2 shipments in transit were temporarily flagged as status unknown when the systems disconnected. Catherine's team worked frantically to track them down manually, proving that even the most robust automated systems still relied on human intervention. "We've got an issue with the Denver-Chicago route," her logistics director called out. "The cargo is in a holding pattern. Override the protocol for that shipment," Catherine commanded. "Manual tracking until we can confirm delivery." She dialed Olivia's number. It went straight to voicemail. Olivia would be managing her end of the situation. Instead, Catherine called the head of emergency operations. "James, this is Catherine. Obsidian is live." She paused, adjusting her red glasses, her signature tell when stressed. "I need a retrieval team at LAX cargo terminal in 15 minutes. Priority 1, medical cargo extraction from Horizon Air Flight 842. Full authorization and documentation will be on their secure tablets. This is not a drill." She hung up and watched as the dashboard began to populate with confirmation messages as each system component executed its programmed tasks. Harrington BioMedical Systems was severing a billion-dollar relationship in real time, and the precision with which it was happening was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Catherine had helped design this protocol, but seeing it activated was like watching a digital tsunami. The destruction would be massive but perfectly controlled, sweeping away only what it was programmed to target while preserving everything essential to their mission. "God help Horizon Air," she whispered to herself. What the hell did they do? Exactly 12 minutes after Olivia's text message at Horizon Airline's corporate headquarters in Dallas, a senior vice president of corporate accounts, a man named Thomas Bennett, was just finishing his lunch, a tuna sandwich he ate at his desk every Thursday when a series of red alerts began flashing on his desktop. An automated email with the subject line: Immediate contract termination. Harrington BioMedical Systems Act 774B1 appeared in his inbox. It was boilerplate, brutally efficient, and legally airtight, citing Clause 34B of their agreement termination for cause due to actions which fundamentally undermine operational integrity and trust. The system executed. Precise. Ruthless. Unstoppable. Harrington BioMedical's system was electronically clawing back all prepaid fees for the next quarter's cargo shipments, a sum totaling just over $32 million. The airline's proprietary cargo booking system, which interfaced directly with Harrington BioMedical, suddenly went dark. All scheduled shipments from Harrington for the next 6 months, hundreds of flights a day, globally vanished. The system began flagging dozens of upcoming flights that were now suddenly unprofitable as their most valuable cargo had been vaporized. Bennett's phone rang. It was the head of the cargo division. He was screaming. "What the hell is going on, Tom? We just lost every Harrington shipment. They're gone. The system is a sea of red. It's a bloodbath." Thomas stared at his screen in disbelief. "I don't know, Jack. I'm looking at an automatic termination notice, but this can't be right. There must be a system error." "This is no error," Jack shouted through the phone. "I've got pilots calling in saying their manifests are being updated mid-preparation. Cargo is being removed from planes that haven't even finished loading. Someone at Harrington has pulled the plug on us." Thomas tried to make sense of it. Harrington BioMedical was their most stable, most valuable corporate partner. The relationship had been rock solid for nearly a decade. Something catastrophic must have happened. A plane crash, a lost shipment, a major security breach. "Get me everything you can on any Harrington shipments in transit right now," Thomas ordered, especially anything that might have been delayed or compromised. As he hung up, his email pinged again. This time it was from their legal department. Urgent Harrington BioMedical Systems, terminal contract breach. The message was clear. This wasn't a glitch. This was deliberate. His phone rang again. This time it was Michael Ingram, the CEO of Horizon Airlines. "Bennett, what the hell is happening with Harrington?" Ingram's voice was tight with controlled panic. "I've got the CFO telling me we just lost $32 million in an instant, and the board is blowing up my phone because our stock just dropped 4 points in 3 minutes." "I don't know, sir," Thomas admitted. "We've received an automated termination notice citing breach of contract, but there's no specific incident mentioned. I'm trying to find out Ingram, cut him off. Now. This company cannot afford to lose Harrington. Whatever happened, whoever's responsible, fix it. I don't care what it takes." The line went dead. Thomas sat back in his chair, sweat beading on his forehead. In his 15 years at Horizon, he'd never seen anything like this, a partner the size of Harrington, executing a full separation protocol without warning, without negotiation, without so much as a courtesy call. Something had gone terribly wrong, and he had to find out what before the damage became irreversible. Little did he know at Gate 44B in LAX Terminal 4, the first tremors of the earthquake that would level his career were just beginning to be felt. Back at LAX Terminal 4, Patricia Weldon was continuing to board the flight, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. "Have a nice flight," she droned, scanning another pass. "Enjoy your trip." Tap, tap, tap went her acrylic nails on the scanner. Suddenly, the computer screen in front of her flickered. A new message flashed in bold red letters. "Boarding suspended. Gate authority revoked." Her scanner beeped angrily and refused to accept the next boarding pass. "What in the world?" she muttered, trying to click the message away. It wouldn't disappear. "Is there a problem?" asked the businessman whose boarding pass had just been rejected. "Just a minor technical issue," Patricia assured him with her practiced smile. "The system sometimes gets these hiccups. Let me try again. She rescanned his pass. The error message remained accompanied by an even more alarming notice. Flight status changed pending review. You know what she said with false brightness. Let me call my supervisor. These computers, I swear they have a mind of their own. Patricia's supervisor, a harried-looking Hispanic man named Frank Morales, came rushing down the jet bridge ramp, his face pale and slick with sweat. Patricia, what happened here? What did you do? He demanded, his voice a frantic whisper. What did I do? Nothing, Patricia retorted, offended. The system just froze up. It's probably another IT glitch from those so-called geniuses in Dallas who never actually work a gate. This is not a glitch, Frank hissed, looking around at the confused passengers gathering at the desk. I just got a call from Dallas. Corporate is in meltdown. They say it originated from this gate, from this flight. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping even lower. They're screaming about Harrington BioMedical. Did you have any interaction with anyone from Harrington? BioMedical? Patricia's mind went blank. The name sounded vaguely familiar, like a company she'd seen on cargo manifests. But she wasn't a cargo agent. She dealt with people. No one important, she said dismissively. Just the usual bunch. Some suits, a few families. Her eyes scanned the remaining people in the priority line, then the sea of faces in economy. She couldn't place anyone of significance. Her brain, conditioned by years of routine, had already discarded the image of the woman in the joggers as unimportant. Are you absolutely sure? Frank pressed his face, growing increasingly desperate. Think Patricia. This is critical. Corporate says all our systems are being locked out. Cargo is being pulled from the plane as we speak. Patricia shook her head impatiently. I've been doing this job for 18 years, Frank. I think I'd recognize someone important. It was just the regular Thursday crowd, plus a few entitled types trying to sneak into first class. Entitled types? Frank's voice sharpened. What entitled types? Patricia waved her hand dismissively. Oh, you know the ones. Think they can wear gym clothes and still get first-class treatment. I sent one back to economy not 15 minutes ago. She didn't even argue, so she knew she was wrong. Meanwhile, Tyler returned from checking on another issue, looking confused. What's going on? The cargo team just called up. They said there's a special retrieval unit coming for the medical shipment in Bay 3. They've been ordered to give them full access. Frank's eyes widened in alarm. Medical shipment? What medical shipment? Tyler checked his tablet. Looks like a priority organ transport. Pediatric heart for Mount Sinai. He scrolled further. Shipper is Harrington BioMedical Systems. The color drained from Frank's face. Oh my God. He turned back to Patricia, his voice now trembling. The woman you sent to the economy line? What did she look like? Patricia rolled her eyes. I don't know, Frank. Plain clothes, joggers, sneakers, black woman, no makeup, no fancy bags. Definitely not first-class material. She tried to use the priority lane, so I redirected her. Frank looked like he might collapse. Did you check her boarding pass? Did you actually look at it? I didn't need to, Patricia said defensively. It was obvious she didn't belong. Name Frank cut her off. Did you get her name? Patricia hesitated. No, I didn't. Dr. Olivia Harrington, a voice said from behind them. It was Sophia Martinez, her phone still recording. I heard her assistant start to say it before she stopped him. I looked her up while I was waiting. She's the CEO of Harrington BioMedical Systems. Sophia held up her phone, showing a professional photo of Olivia in business attire receiving an award. The company that ships life-saving medical cargo. And you sent her to economy. Sophia continued, her voice rising, without even checking her boarding pass. My video of this has already gotten 3,000 views in the last 15 minutes. Frank Morales looked like a man watching his career disintegrate before his eyes. He glanced at his watch, not a simple silver timepiece like Olivia's, but an oversized status symbol that suddenly felt meaningless. "Patricia," he whispered, "what have you done?" 20 minutes after Olivia's text, the main departure board for the entire terminal began to update. Next to Horizon Air 842 JFK, the on-time status switched to a glaring, ominous yellow delayed. A moment later, it switched again to status pending. Passengers began to murmur. Phones came out. The tide of controlled chaos in the terminal was beginning to turn toward genuine unrest. "What's happening with our flight?" Someone called out from the growing crowd around the desk. "Ladies and gentlemen," Frank began, his voice strained as he tried to project calm authority, "we're experiencing a brief operational delay. Please bear with us while we—" His walkie-talkie crackled to life, interrupting him. "Gate 44B. This is operations. We have an executive order from Horizon Corporate. They're grounding Flight 842. Repeat, grounding the flight." Frank grabbed his radio, turning away from the increasingly agitated crowd. "Grounding it. On what grounds? The plane is ready. The crew is on board." The voice on the other end was grim. "The grounds are that its primary cargo has just been legally repossessed by the shipper. And the shipper, Harrington BioMedical, has just terminated every contract they have with this airline effective immediately. They're invoking a hazardous materials clause and are sending their own team to retrieve their property from the cargo hold. Until that happens, your plane is not going anywhere." Frank stared blankly at the chaos he was now presiding over. Repossessed cargo, a terminated contract worth millions, all originating from his gate in the last 10 minutes. It made no sense. It was impossible. He scanned the crowd again, his desperation growing. Who could possibly have that kind of power? His eyes landed on the portly man in the shiny suit who had been in the priority line. Was it him? He started to walk toward him, but then his gaze drifted past the man and he saw them. Standing quietly by the newsstand, a young man who looked like a nervous intern and a black woman in simple athletic wear. He saw her look at the departure board, then back down at her phone, her expression utterly serene. A cold, horrifying realization began to dawn in Frank Morales's mind. Power didn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it wore joggers, and his gate agent had just told it to go to the back of the line. The chaos at Gate 44B was no longer a quiet, simmering affair. It had boiled over. Passengers, sensing that status pending was a corporate euphemism for canceled, crowded the desk, their voices a rising chorus of frustration and anger. "What is going on? I have a connecting flight in New York. This is unacceptable. We demand answers. I need to be on this flight. It's my daughter's wedding tomorrow." Patricia was completely overwhelmed. Her painted-on smile had melted away, replaced by a deer-in-the-headlights terror. She was a cog in a machine trained to handle routine problems like seat changes and baggage fees. She had no script for a corporate apocalypse. Frank Morales, meanwhile, was having the worst conversation of his professional life. Thomas Bennett, the SVP from Dallas, was on his cell phone, and his voice was a low, dangerous growl that promised swift and terrible consequences. "Frank, I need you to understand what you've done," Bennett seethed through the phone. "Harrington BioMedical isn't just a client. They are our lifeblood for the entire West Coast biomedical corridor. We have planes in the air right now all over the world filled with their cargo. This single action has jeopardized our entire logistics network. I need you to tell me right now who from Harrington BioMedical was at your gate." Frank's eyes darted back to the woman by the Hudson News. It couldn't be. It was too absurd. He had spent his career bowing to men in expensive suits and learning to spot a platinum card at 20 paces. His entire professional instinct screamed that this woman was a nobody. I don't know, sir," he stammered. "The CEO was on your flight manifest," Frank Bennett roared, his voice cracking with rage. "Dr. Olivia Harrington, Forbes's most innovative leader in logistics, 4 years running. She was a guest of the airline flagged for special assistance, not that she ever uses it. Now find her. Get on your goddamn knees and fix this. The name hit Frank like a physical blow. Dr. Olivia Harrington. He'd seen her picture in magazines. He remembered it now, a feature in Wired about her company's groundbreaking work. But in the photo, she had been in a sharp power suit standing in a gleaming laboratory. The woman in his terminal looked nothing like that. His blood turned to ice water. He looked at Patricia, whose face was a mask of confusion. "Patricia," he said, his voice trembling. "The woman you sent to the economy line. The black woman in the joggers. Did you see where she went?" Patricia blinked, the memory slowly filtering through the fog of her panic. She's just standing over there by the bookstore." She said it with a hint of her earlier dismissiveness, still not grasping the magnitude of her blunder. Frank didn't reply. He pocketed his phone and began walking from his gate, stiff and robotic, toward Olivia Harrington. He felt like a man walking toward his own execution. The angry shouts of the passengers, the frantic announcements, it all faded into a dull buzz. His entire world had shrunk to the space between him and the calm, unassuming woman who was now checking the time on her simple silver watch. As he approached, Marcus saw him coming and instinctively took a protective step in front of Olivia. Dr. Harrington Frank said, his voice cracking. He was sweating profusely now, his uniform collar feeling like a noose. Olivia looked up from her watch, her expression neutral. "Yes, I am Frank Morales, the station manager for Horizon Air here at LAX." He was wringing his hands, a gesture of pure desperation. "There has been a terrible misunderstanding at the gate. A catastrophic error in judgment on the part of my staff." He shot a venomous glare back at Patricia, who was watching them, her jaw now hanging slack as the pieces began to click into place in her mind. The color drained from her face. "It was not a misunderstanding, Mr. Morales." Olivia replied, her voice soft but clear, cutting through the airport noise. "Your employee was very clear. She assessed me, made a judgment, and gave me an instruction. I simply chose to accept her assessment." "Accept her?" Frank asked, bewildered. "What do you mean?" "She assessed that my patronage was not a priority for Horizon Air. I have therefore taken my non-priority patronage elsewhere," Olivia explained. "Permanently." The word permanently landed with the finality of a gavel strike. Frank flinched, as if he'd been slapped. "Dr. Harrington, please," he begged, his professionalism crumbling into raw pleading. "We can fix this. We will get you on the plane immediately. I will have the agent responsible terminated on the spot. We will offer you compensation, a lifetime of free flights, whatever it takes. We have a 20-year relationship with your company." Olivia let the silence stretch for a moment, forcing him to stand there in his own desperate sweat. Marcus watched her. She wasn't angry. She wasn't gloating. She was dissecting the situation like a surgeon examining a diseased organ. "Mr. Morales," she finally said, "this is no longer about my wounded feelings or your employee's lack of training. This is about a fundamental failure. The misunderstanding, as you call it, revealed a fatal flaw in your service paradigm. My company ships materials where a delay of 1 hour can be the difference between a successful organ transplant and a child's death. We rely on partners who are efficient, precise, and respectful at every single level of their organization, from the cargo bay to the cockpit to the boarding gate. What your employee showed me was not just personal prejudice. It was a symptom of a corporate culture that is at best sloppy and at worst discriminatory. That introduces a level of operational risk I am no longer willing to accept." She paused, letting the business school lecture sink in. "The contract is terminated. My legal team has already sent the official notice. It is irrevocable." Frank looked like he was going to be physically ill. He had been sent to put out a fire, but he had arrived to find only a smoking crater. Suddenly, a new element of panic entered his eyes. "But the cargo, your shipment on this flight. It's critical, isn't it? The manifest says it's a level 1 biotransport." This was the twist Marcus hadn't fully grasped. He knew about the heart, of course, but he hadn't connected the dots in the heat of the moment. By canceling the contract, Dr. Harrington jeopardized the delivery. He looked at his boss, a flicker of doubt in his eyes for the first time. Olivia's expression hardened just for a second. It was the first crack he had seen in her serene facade. She had made a calculated, ruthless decision, and now she had to deal with the life-or-death consequences she had set in motion. "Yes, it is critical," she said, her voice dropping to a steely whisper. "And since your airline can no longer be trusted to fulfill its obligations, I am managing it myself." She turned away from the stunned station manager and put her phone to her ear. It had been ringing silently against her palm. "Catherine," she said, her voice now a rapid-fire sequence of commands. "Obsidian is executed." "Good. Now activate Protocol Helios. I need a G5550 on the tarmac at the LAX private suite in 40 minutes. Full medical transport capabilities. I want our best retrieval team at the Horizon Cargo Bay in 10. I'm sending you the authorization codes now. Get Mount Sinai on the line. Tell Dr. Anna Sharma that the package is still en route, but our ETA will be updated. We are not letting this child down." She hung up and looked at Marcus. The calm, detached observer was gone. In her place was the CEO, a commander deploying her troops. "Marcus, get on the phone with ground transport. I need a black car at the arrivals level in 20 minutes. Tell them it's a code Crimson Transit. They'll know what that means." Marcus jolted into action, nodded, and fumbled for his phone. Olivia turned back to the ghost-white Frank Morales, who had overheard her entire conversation. He was staring at her with a mixture of terror and awe. She had not only fired his airline, she had, in the space of a 10-minute phone call, chartered a private medical jet and mobilized an extraction team to seize cargo from his company's plane. She was operating on a level he couldn't even comprehend. "My team will be here shortly to take possession of our property, Mr. Morales," she said coolly. "I expect your full and unconditional cooperation. If they encounter any resistance from your ground crew, your security, or your union reps, I will make one more phone call. That call will be to the FAA to report a hostile withholding of critical medical materials. I assure you the fallout from Protocol Obsidian will feel like a pleasant summer breeze compared to that." She then walked away, Marcus, hurrying to keep pace, leaving the station manager standing alone in the middle of a terminal that had become the epicenter of his own personal and professional ruin. Across the way, Patricia was being quietly spoken to by 2 other airline representatives. Her face was ashen. Her days with Horizon Air were over. She, Frank, and the entire airline were just beginning to understand the catastrophic consequences of telling the wrong woman to get in the back of the line. "But I didn't know who she was." Patricia protested, her voice rising with panic. "How was I supposed to know? She looked like anybody else?" "That's exactly the problem," one of the representatives replied grimly. "She wasn't supposed to be treated differently because of who she is. She was supposed to be treated with respect because she's a human being with a valid first-class ticket." Patricia's eyes widened as the full implications of what she'd done began to sink in. "But it was just one passenger," she whispered. "One flight." "No," the other representative corrected. "It was a $400 million contract and the company's reputation. And you just destroyed both because you couldn't be bothered to look at her boarding pass." What Patricia never mentioned, what she had buried deep inside herself, was the irony she'd only recently begun to recognize. 20 years earlier, as a young woman starting her career in hospitality, she herself had been denied a promotion because she didn't look professional enough with her natural hairstyle. She'd internalized that rejection, transformed it into rigid standards she imposed on others, perpetuating the very cycle that had once wounded her. The news of the Harrington BioMedical contract termination spread through Horizon Air's corporate structure like a virus. Traders who monitored airline-adjacent logistics firms caught wind of the sudden, unexplained halt in Harrington's shipping volume. Automated trading algorithms programmed to interpret such a disruption as a sign of catastrophic failure began selling off Horizon Air stock. In the 20 minutes that followed Olivia's text message, HZN shares dipped by 3%. By the time Olivia was walking away from Frank Morales, the stock had plummeted by 12%, wiping over $450 million from the company's market capitalization. The CEO of Horizon Air, a man named Michael Ingram, found out about the crisis not from his own staff, but from a frantic call from a Wall Street analyst demanding to know if one of his planes had gone down. "Michael, we're seeing catastrophic contract termination notices from Harrington BioMedical hitting our servers," the analyst said without preamble. "Your stock is in free fall. Is there a crash? A security breach? What the hell is happening?" Michael Ingram felt his stomach drop. Harrington was their largest medical logistics partner, responsible for nearly 30% of their high-value cargo revenue. If they were pulling out, it was an extinction-level event for Horizon's cargo division. "I'll call you back," he managed, then immediately dialed Thomas Bennett. "Bennett, talk to me. What's happening with Harrington?" "Sir, we're still piecing it together," Thomas replied, his voice strained. "But it appears there was an incident at LAX Gate 44B. A gate agent denied boarding to a woman in casual clothes, sent her to the economy line. That woman was Olivia Harrington." The CEO, Ingram, felt physically ill. "Please tell me you're joking. I wish I was, sir. She had a first-class ticket platinum status. The gate agent didn't even look at her boarding pass, just saw a black woman in joggers and made an assumption. And for this, she's terminating a 20-year partnership worth billions?" Ingram asked incredulously. "Sir." "There's more," Thomas continued grimly. "Harrington had a Level 1 medical shipment on that flight, a pediatric heart for transplant. Their company considers the gate agent's behavior evidence of a fundamental issue that creates unacceptable risk for their shipments. They've activated something called Protocol Obsidian. It's a full nuclear termination of all business relationships. They're pulling their cargo from every single one of our flights worldwide, effective immediately." Ingram sank into his chair, the full magnitude of the disaster crashing over him. "Get me Olivia Harrington on the phone. Now. We're trying, sir. She's not taking calls. She's deployed a retrieval team to LAX to physically remove the heart from our cargo hold. She's chartered a private medical jet. She's personally managing the crisis our gate agent created." "Jesus Christ," Ingram whispered. "She's showing us exactly why she doesn't need us." On the tarmac at LAX, the ground crew of Flight 842 received a bewildering set of new orders. "Cease all pre-flight preparations. Await specialized cargo team. Do not under any circumstances approach Cargo Bay 3. Minutes later, 2 black vans with the subtle Harrington BioMedical logo, a stylized H that resembled a steady heartbeat, sped across the airfield, guided by airport operations vehicles. A team of 6 professionals in quiet, efficient gray jumpsuits emerged. They were not loud or aggressive. They moved with the quiet confidence of special forces. They presented the Horizon ground crew supervisor with a digital warrant signed by Olivia and co-signed by Catherine Rivera, authorizing the immediate retrieval of their property. The document was ironclad. The Horizon crew, bewildered and intimidated, could only stand back and watch as the Harrington team expertly unlatched the cargo bay, accessed the advanced transport unit, and carefully transferred the container holding the pediatric heart to their own climate-controlled vehicle. The entire operation took less than 7 minutes. It was a masterclass in precision and efficiency, everything Olivia had accused the airline of lacking. Back in the terminal, the scene had devolved further. Flight 842 was now officially canceled. The passengers were being told to rebook, their angry shouts echoing through the concourse. Patricia was no longer at the gate. She had been escorted by airport security to a back office, her face a tear-streaked mask of disbelief. Her career, built over 18 years of weary service, had been dismantled in less time than it takes to drink a cup of coffee. She had made a simple mistake, she told herself, a simple assumption. She had no way of knowing, but in a world of consequences, ignorance was no defense. Outside the door of the office, she could still hear the chaos she had created. The angry voices, the demands for compensation, the bewildered questions. And somewhere in that same airport was a woman in joggers who had just shown her what real power looked like. It didn't need a uniform, a title badge, or a special line. It needed only the authority to act and the conviction to do so. Patricia's silver-painted acrylic nails, the ones she had so confidently tapped against the scanner as she dismissed Olivia, now trembled against the tabletop. Olivia and Marcus were now in a sleek black Escalade, speeding through the labyrinth of service roads that connected the commercial terminals to the private airfields. Marcus was silent, still processing the sheer scale of what he had just witnessed. He had seen power in meetings, but that was abstract numbers on a spreadsheet, clauses in a contract. This was real, tangible power. The power to halt the world, to bend the infrastructure of a multi-billion-dollar corporation to your will, all with a few words and a tap on a screen. He finally found his voice. The heart. Are they going to be okay? The timing. Olivia was looking out the window, her face unreadable. It will be tight, but we will make it. We build redundancies into our redundancies, Marcus. Protocol Helios, the private medical jet solution, is designed for exactly this kind of partner failure. We have a 30-minute buffer built into the Mount Sinai surgical schedule. We'll burn that buffer, but the delivery will be made. She sounded confident, but Marcus could see the tension in her jaw. She had taken a colossal gamble. She had wagered a child's life on a principle. The thought was both terrifying and profoundly admirable. She hadn't done it for ego, he realized. She had done it because an airline that could make such a casual, prejudiced error at the gate could not be trusted with the thousands of life-or-death shipments her company handled every single day. Today it was a dismissive comment. Tomorrow it could be a misplaced organ. She had amputated a limb to save the entire body. The silver watch on her wrist caught the light. Its steady tick-tick-tick seemed to count down the moments until they would know if her gamble had paid off. As their car pulled up to the discreet, luxurious entrance of the private aviation suite, Olivia's phone rang again. The caller ID simply read, Michael Ingram. She let it ring 3 times before answering. She put it on speaker. Olivia. The voice was strained. The voice of a man trying to project calm from the epicenter of an earthquake. Michael Ingram. Here I am. I am speechless. I have just been briefed on the situation at LAX. First and foremost, on behalf of every single employee at Horizon Air, I want to offer my most profound and sincere apology for the disgraceful treatment you received. I appreciate the call, Michael, Olivia said, her voice devoid of warmth. We are taking immediate and decisive action. Ingram continued, his voice speeding up. The employee in question has been terminated. The station manager has been suspended pending a full investigation. We are launching a mandatory top-to-bottom retraining of all 80,000 of our employees on sensitivity service and implicit bias. This is a watershed moment for us. A wake-up call. It sounds like it, Olivia replied evenly. Olivia, please. Ingram's voice lost its corporate polish, becoming the raw plea of a man watching his company burn. A 20-year partnership, billions of dollars in shared business. We can't let it end like this over the ignorance of one employee. This was the moment, the negotiation. The point where most CEOs would leverage the situation for a better deal, for financial compensation, for a pound of flesh. Marcus leaned forward, eager to hear how she would respond. Michael, Olivia said, and her voice was now tinged with a deep weariness. "Let me ask you a question. Was the employee who insulted me today the first employee in your company to ever have a prejudiced thought? Was she the first to ever judge a passenger by the color of their skin or the clothes on their back? Of course not, and will she be the last?" Olivia cut him off. "Even with your new training programs and your investigations, will you be able to guarantee me with 100% certainty that no Harrington BioMedical employee, no critical shipment will ever again be impacted by the simple mistake of one of your staff members?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. The only sound was Ingram's heavy breathing. He was a CEO. He couldn't make a guarantee like that. It was impossible. "I can guarantee that we will do everything in our power," he began, but Olivia cut him off again. "That's not good enough. Not for me. Not for the people who depend on my company to deliver. I don't enjoy this, Michael. You have been a decent partner for many years, but the world has changed. The standards have changed. My tolerance for this specific type of risk has become zero." She took a breath. "The contract termination stands. There is no negotiation. However, I am not a monster. My COO will be in touch with your team to organize a transition. We will not leave you with grounded planes overnight. We will phase out our cargo over the next 90 days on a schedule of our choosing to ensure minimal disruption to the patients we serve. After that, our relationship is over. Goodbye, Michael." She ended the call before he could reply. She looked at Marcus, whose eyes were wide with a new level of understanding. She hadn't just sought revenge. She had offered a structured professional wind-down. She had decapitated the company, but was willing to help organize the funeral. It was the coldest, most professional, most ruthless act of mercy he had ever witnessed. A man in a crisp suit opened the Escalade's door. "Dr. Harrington, your jet is fueled and ready. The package is secure on board. We can depart on your command." Olivia nodded as she stepped out of the car and onto the tarmac where a gleaming Gulfstream G550 waited. The last vestiges of the LAX terminal chaos seemed a world away. She had entered that airport an anonymous traveler and left it a force of nature who had single-handedly brought a corporate giant to its knees. The flight had been canceled, but her mission was very much alive. As she mounted the steps to the jet, her silver watch caught the California sunlight one more time, a silent reminder that time waited for no one, not even the most powerful CEO. The heart had its own clock counting down to either salvation or tragedy. The ascent was a smooth, powerful surge into the darkening California sky. A transition from the chaotic realm of the earthbound to the serene kingdom of the upper atmosphere. Inside the cabin of the Gulfstream G550, the silence was profound, a velvet curtain that descended and muffled the world. It was an engineered tranquility, the antithesis of the terminal they had just departed. A place of jarring announcements, frustrated shouts, and the relentless friction of humanity. Here there was only the faintest whisper of recycled air, and the distant, reassuring hum of the Rolls-Royce engines propelling them eastward at over 500 miles per hour. Marcus sat across from Olivia on a supple cream leather seat, the polished dark wood of the fold-out table between them gleaming under the soft, warm cabin lights. A flight attendant had offered them champagne gourmet sandwiches, a full meal, anything they desired. Marcus had reflexively asked for a bottle of sparkling water which now sat untouched, its condensation tracing a perfect circle on the coaster. He couldn't bring himself to eat or drink. His mind was still processing the sheer scale of the day's events, replaying the sequence from the initial dismissive comment to the global corporate fallout. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Dr. Harrington, we're getting reports of unexpected turbulence over Pennsylvania. We may need to alter our route." Olivia's hand instinctively went to her silver watch. Every minute counted. "What's our ETA if we divert?" she asked. "Add 12 minutes to our arrival time," the pilot replied. Olivia calculated quickly. "We still have an 18-minute buffer. Proceed with the diversion if necessary, but stay as close to our original flight path as safety allows. Understood, Dr. Harrington. She had always seen power as something loud, something performed. He'd witnessed it in hostile takeovers discussed on the news in politicians' thunderous speeches in the fictionalized shouting matches of boardroom dramas. But what he had witnessed today was different. It was a quiet, almost invisible form of power, structural and absolute. It was the power not of a wrecking ball, but of an architect who with a single command could erase a wing of the building and reroute its entire foundation. He felt a dizzying mix of awe and a sliver of fear. He was seeing the true nature of the woman he worked for, the cold calculus of consequence that lay beneath her calm academic demeanor. His thoughts kept circling back to the human cost. He pictured Patricia, the gate agent, her smugness curdling into terror as she was escorted away. He pictured Frank Morales, the station manager, his career likely in tatters. He pictured the anonymous investors who had lost money in the stock dip. Were they all just collateral damage in a war declared over a single ignorant comment? The question of proportionality gnawed at him. Olivia, for her part, seemed to have already moved on. She had her tablet out and was engaged in a silent, efficient flurry of activity. She reviewed the new flight path coordinated with the ground team in New York and read a detailed meteorological report to anticipate any turbulence. In a secured temperature-controlled section at the rear of the cabin, a Harrington BioMedical medical technician, a quiet man named Raphael, sat monitoring a screen that displayed the vitals of the precious cargo. He was the shepherd of this mission, now a physical embodiment of the company's promise. Meanwhile, back in the public sphere, the shockwaves from Olivia's decision continued to ripple outward. Sophia Martinez's video had already gained traction on social media. Her original post just witnessed horrific discrimination at Horizon Air LAX Terminal 4. Black woman in casual clothes sent to back of line despite first-class ticket. Turns out she's the CEO of a major company. At Horizon Air fail had been shared over 10,000 times in the first hour. A follow-up tweet with a link to Olivia's corporate profile and Forbes coverage had added context that made the situation even more explosive. The woman at Horizon Air just discriminated against is Dr. Olivia Harrington, CEO of Harrington BioMedical. They ship life-saving medical cargo. Hope that bias was worth it. Horizon. #consequence culture. The reaction wasn't one-sided, however. A counter hashtag #TeamPatricia had begun trending with people arguing that Olivia's response was disproportionate and would hurt innocent Horizon employees. This CEO is throwing a tantrum and costing people their jobs because she didn't get first-class treatment, one tweet read. Talk about privilege. Maybe just show your boarding pass next time instead of destroying an entire company, suggested another. News outlets were beginning to pick up the story. The initial headlines were tentative: major medical logistics company reportedly severs ties with Horizon Air and Horizon Air stock plummets, amid rumors of contract loss. But as more details emerged, the narrative sharpened. Black CEO denied first-class boarding responds by terminating billion-dollar contract, and Harrington BioMedical pulls plug on Horizon Air. After CEO faces discrimination. As Horizon Air struggled, their competitors initially gloated, but within days every major airline was quietly auditing their own staff training protocols. Delta's CEO was caught on a hot mic asking his team, "Could this happen to us?" United Airlines immediately issued a memo to all customer-facing staff, reminding them of the importance of verifying boarding passes before making judgments. Southwest Airlines accelerated the rollout of a new training program focused on unconscious bias. The Harrington effect, as industry analysts were already calling it, had sent tremors through the entire sector. No airline wanted to be the next Horizon Air caught in a public relations nightmare with billions in market value at stake. Civil rights organizations released statements supporting Olivia's actions. For too long, corporations have been allowed to treat discrimination as a PR problem rather than a fundamental business failure, wrote the president of the National Coalition for Equality. Dr. Harrington's response demonstrates that respect is not optional. It's essential. Business analysts were scrambling to assess the damage. Financial news channels had broken into their regular programming to discuss the implications. "This is unprecedented," one analyst remarked. "We're seeing a real-time demonstration of how bias and discrimination can translate directly into catastrophic business consequences. Horizon Air just lost 12% of its market value because one employee made an assumption based on appearance." In corporate boardrooms across the country, CEOs were calling emergency meetings using the Horizon Air situation as a cautionary tale. Diversity training budgets were being hastily increased. Hospitality protocols were being urgently reviewed. The message was clear in the modern business landscape. Prejudice wasn't just morally wrong, it was financially devastating. Back on the Gulfstream G550 flying high above the chaos her decision had created, Olivia Harrington remained focused on the one thing that truly mattered, ensuring that a 7-year-old girl named Sophia Martinez would receive her new heart on schedule. The silver watch on her wrist continued its steady count each tick, bringing them closer to New York, closer to knowing whether her calculated risk would save a life or end one. Finally, after nearly an hour of flying through the silent, starry darkness, Marcus found his voice. It felt small in the vast quiet of the cabin. "She lost her job." He said the words hanging in the air. "The gate agent, Patricia." Olivia looked up from her tablet, her gaze steady. She didn't seem surprised by the question. She seemed to have been waiting for it. "Yes, Marcus, I imagine she did. And Mr. Morales." And the stock price, Marcus continued, pressing forward. Hundreds of millions of dollars in value gone in an afternoon. All those people. He trailed off, the immensity of it all feeling too large to articulate. He finally asked the question that had been circling in his mind, the question that separated admiration from true understanding. Do you feel bad for them?" Olivia set her tablet down on the table with deliberate care. She folded her hands and took a long moment, not for dramatic effect, but as if to give the question the weight it deserved. She looked out the curved window at the ink-black canvas of the night sky. "I feel a deep sense of regret that it came to this," she began, her voice measured and thoughtful. "I don't derive any satisfaction from a woman like Patricia losing her livelihood. I can guess her story. I'm sure she works long hours for pay that doesn't reflect the stress of her job. I'm sure she deals with rude, entitled people all day long. And I am sure that in her world she has learned to survive by making quick, cynical judgments about the people who pass in front of her. Her mind created a shortcut, a prejudice to make her world simpler. A person who looks like me isn't supposed to be in a place of privilege. It's the banality of bias, Marcus. It's rarely a grand, villainous hatred. It's a million small, lazy, corrosive assumptions." She turned her gaze back to him, and her eyes were intense. "But here is the crucial distinction. I can have empathy for her personal situation, but I can have zero tolerance for the professional consequences of her actions. My decision was not about punishing Patricia. It was about protecting this company, our employees, and most importantly, the patients at the end of our supply chain from the next Patricia and the one after that. Because her simple mistake revealed a fundamental rot. It told me that Horizon's culture was not robust enough to prevent personal prejudice from infecting professional responsibility, and that in our line of work is a terminal disease." The jet dipped slightly as it navigated a patch of unsteady air. Olivia didn't seem to notice. "Power isn't about making a scene," she continued, picking up the thread. "Anyone can yell at a gate agent. That's performative anger. It makes you feel better for a moment, but it changes nothing about the underlying system. True power, structural power, is the ability to change the system itself. It's about understanding the contracts, the financial levers, the operational dependencies, the invisible architecture of the world. And it is about having the foresight to build a tool like Protocol Obsidian. It's a terrible, beautiful weapon, and the immense burden of leadership is knowing that you are the only one who can decide when to use it. Her phone buzzed with a specific, discreet tone. It was the satellite link. She glanced at the screen. Catherine Rivera, she answered, putting it on speaker. Olivia Catherine's voice was crisp, professional. Mount Sinai is on the line. Dr. Sharma is getting anxious about the revised ETA. The surgical team is prepped and waiting. She needs your absolute assurance. This was it. The moment of truth. The consequences of her decision were now knocking at the door. Put her through, Catherine Olivia said calmly. A moment later, a new voice, female and taut with stress, filled the cabin. Dr. Harrington Anna Sharma. Dr. Sharma, I'm here. What's your status? Olivia's voice had shifted. It was now imbued with an unshakable command, the voice of a field general speaking to a trusted lieutenant. We're ready, Olivia, but the clock is ticking. Your original 30-minute buffer is now down to 10. If your ground team hits one red light in Queens, we could be in trouble. Are you positive you can make this window? Anna Olivia said, her voice a bedrock of certainty. My vehicle will be met by a police escort at the JFK private terminal. The route has been cleared. Your package will be in your hands in exactly 58 minutes. You have my word. Prepare your team. Understood, Dr. Harrington said. Dr. Sharma, the tension in her voice easing slightly, replaced by trust. We're counting on you. You can, Olivia replied. And the line went dead. She looked at Marcus, who had listened to the exchange, his heart pounding. She had just made a promise that carried the weight of a child's life. You see, Marcus, she said softly. The commander receded and the mentor returning. This is the risk. The prejudice of that one woman created this moment of extreme jeopardy. The failure was hers, but the responsibility to fix it is mine. It always is. That's why the contract had to be terminated. The stakes are too high for anything less than perfection. Marcus nodded slowly, beginning to understand. Then he asked a question that had been nagging at him since they left the terminal. Dr. Harrington, why didn't you just show her your boarding pass? Why not just prove her wrong right there? Olivia's expression softened slightly. Because that would have solved only my problem in that moment. It wouldn't have solved the problem for the next person who looks like me but doesn't have the power to ground an airline. She took a sip of water before continuing. Let me tell you a story I've never shared with any employee. 10 years ago, before Harrington BioMedical existed, I was a researcher at Massachusetts General developing a new preservation method for organ transport. I had created a prototype container, and inside it was a heart for a 42-year-old father of 3. I was flying commercial in a rush. She looked out the window, her reflection ghostly against the black sky. Her hand unconsciously moved to her silver watch, her father's gift, the timepiece that had witnessed her greatest triumphs and most crushing failures. A gate agent wouldn't let me board with what she called suspicious equipment. She demanded paperwork I'd already provided. She kept saying I didn't look like a doctor. By the time her supervisor intervened, I'd missed the flight. The heart exceeded viability limits. The patient died. Marcus sat stunned. I had no idea. His name was Robert Martinez? Olivia continued, her voice quieter now. He had 3 children. His youngest daughter was only 4. I promised myself that day that I would build a company where that could never happen again. Not to me. Not to anyone. Her gaze was distant now, looking beyond the cabin into the past. I built this company so no one would ever have that power over me or my patients again. When I developed Protocol Obsidian, I wasn't creating a business contingency. I was ensuring that prejudice would never again have the power to take a life that I was responsible for saving. She refocused on Marcus. So you see, my reaction today wasn't about being denied a comfortable seat or about my ego being bruised. It was about recognizing a pattern that I know can kill, and I have zero tolerance for it. Marcus felt a chill run through him. The puzzle pieces clicked into place, the uncompromising standards, the obsession with redundancy, the protocols named after mythological figures with absolute power. Dr. Harrington hadn't built a company. She had built a fortress against the human failings that had once caused her to fail a patient. And the silver watch she never removed it wasn't just a timepiece. It was a memorial, a constant reminder that in their business every second counted, and some mistakes could never be undone. As they began their descent into New York, the city lights emerged from the darkness below, a breathtaking, sprawling galaxy of human endeavor. The landing was flawless. The moment the jet's wheels touched the tarmac, a black Harrington BioMedical vehicle was already pulling up beside it. The handover from Raphael, the onboard technician, to the waiting ground team was a silent, synchronized ballet of professionalism. The doors closed, and the vehicle, now joined by 2 NYPD cruisers, sped off into the night. During the ride into Manhattan in their own car, an unnerving silence fell between them. The mission was out of their hands now. All the power, all the planning had come down to a drive through late-night traffic and the skill of a surgical team. They were crossing the Triborough Bridge, the city's skyline, a glittering declaration of hope and ambition, when Olivia's phone lit up with a message. It was from Catherine. Marcus watched her face, trying to read her expression in the intermittent glow of the streetlights. She read the message, and for a second nothing happened. Then he saw her shoulders, which had been subtly tensed for hours, finally relax. A long, slow breath escaped her lips, and then a smile, not the polite, professional smile he was used to, but a genuine, radiant smile of profound relief and triumph spread across her face. She turned the phone so he could see it. It was a picture. A doctor in blue scrubs mask pulled down, giving a tired but victorious thumbs up. The text below read, "Heart is in. Vitals stable. Dr. Sharma says Sophia is a fighter, and she says to thank you." Olivia leaned her head back against the seat and closed her eyes for the first time all day. The war had been won. The battle had been worth it. The cost, though immense, had purchased something priceless. "Never forget this, Marcus," she said, her voice soft but resonant. "Never forget that what we do isn't about logistics or contracts or stock prices. It's about this. This is the only bottom line that matters." Meanwhile, in Dallas, Michael Ingram sat alone in his office, the lights of the city sprawling below him. On his desk, a single sheet of paper, the preliminary impact assessment of the Harrington BioMedical contract termination. The numbers were staggering. Beyond the immediate $32 million chargeback, the projected annual revenue loss exceeded $400 million. 15 routes would become unprofitable without Harrington's cargo. 3 smaller regional hubs might need to be closed entirely. His phone had been ringing non-stop for hours. Board members, major shareholders, reporters, industry analysts. The stock had stabilized at a 12% loss, but tomorrow would bring fresh scrutiny. The narrative was solidifying, and it was devastating. Horizon Air had a culture problem, and it had cost them dearly. He picked up his desk phone and dialed the head of HR. "Janet, I need every piece of documentation you have on our diversity and inclusion training programs, and I need to know why they failed so catastrophically today." He paused, listening. "No. This isn't just about one employee. This is about our entire corporate culture. Olivia Harrington didn't terminate our contract because of a rude gate agent. She terminated it because she saw our entire organization as fundamentally flawed." After hanging up, he stared at the city lights, wondering how many other Patricias were out there in his company making small, biased decisions that had finally culminated in this disaster. The painful truth was that he didn't know. And that uncertainty was exactly why Olivia Harrington had been right to walk away. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. It was his chief legal counsel. "Sir, I have an update on the Harrington situation." "Let me guess. We're screwed." "Actually, there might be a way forward. Our lawyers found a clause in the contract that could force arbitration instead of unilateral termination. If we..." Ingram held up his hand. "Stop. Just stop." He stood and walked to the window. "We're not fighting this." "But, sir, we could." "No, we couldn't," Ingram said firmly. "We could drag this out, generate bad press for months and still lose in the end. Or we can acknowledge that we failed, accept the consequences, and rebuild something better." The lawyer looked stunned. "You're just going to let them walk away?" Ingram turned back to face him. Olivia Harrington had a choice today. She could have thrown a fit, demanded special treatment, or threatened us with bad publicity. Instead, she silently activated a protocol that showed us exactly how vulnerable we are to our own failures. She didn't terminate our contract because she was insulted. She terminated it because we proved we can't be trusted. He picked up the impact assessment from his desk. "This isn't a PR problem. This is a foundational failure. And we're going to fix it, not fight it." Back in New York, Marcus watched as Olivia finally allowed herself to decompress. The mission was complete. Sophia Martinez would live. The system had bent but not broken. The redundancies had held. "What happens now?" he asked as they settled into their hotel suite. It was nearly 2 a.m., but neither felt ready for sleep. The day's events still coursed through their veins like electricity. "Now we rebuild," Olivia said simply. Horizon was a significant partner, but not an irreplaceable one. "Catherine has already begun implementing our contingency routing. By morning, every critical shipment will have a new pathway, and the financial impact, substantial in the short term, negligible in the long term." She smiled slightly. "The market values consistency and integrity. We've demonstrated both today." Marcus hesitated, then asked the question that had been forming in his mind since their conversation on the plane. "Do you think it will change anything? At Horizon, I mean?" Olivia considered this. "That depends on whether they see this as a PR problem to manage or a fundamental flaw to correct. Most companies opt for the former. It's easier to issue statements and conduct superficial training than to excavate and rebuild your entire corporate culture." She walked to the window, looking out at the sleeping city. "But sometimes catastrophic failure is the only catalyst powerful enough to drive genuine transformation. I hope for their sake this is one of those times." Her phone pinged with an alert. She glanced at it, and a small, satisfied expression crossed her face. Sophia Martinez's video of the incident has just passed 3 million views. Horizon. Air fail is trending nationally. I see Hotch Team Patricia is trending too. Marcus noted, checking his own phone. "Some people think you overreacted." "Of course they do," Olivia replied, unconcerned. "Change is uncomfortable. It's easier to blame the person who exposes a problem than to confront the problem itself." Marcus joined her at the window. "Is the public reaction a good thing?" "It's a necessary thing," Olivia replied. "Public accountability creates pressure for genuine change. Without it, the internal momentum always reverts to the status quo." She turned to him, her expression softening slightly. "You've had quite an introduction to the realities of executive power, Marcus. Some people spend their entire careers without witnessing a decision of this magnitude. Are you okay?" He considered the question carefully. "I'm processing. It's one thing to read about tough corporate decisions in business school. It's another to watch them unfold in real time with real consequences for real people. That's the burden of leadership," she said quietly. "The decisions that matter most are rarely the ones that feel good to make. They're the ones that align with your deepest values, even when they exact a personal cost. Like the cost of being seen as ruthless, Marcus ventured. Olivia laughed softly. Exactly like that. By tomorrow, half the business world will be calling me a corporate executioner who overreacted to poor customer service. The other half will be frantically reviewing their own prejudice prevention protocols to avoid becoming the next Horizon heir. And which half matters to you? Neither, she said simply. The only opinion that matters to me is Sophia Martinez's mother, who gets to keep her daughter. And she'll never even know my name. As dawn broke over New York City, Olivia Harrington finally allowed herself a few hours of rest. But the business world was just waking up to the full implications of what had happened at Gate 44B. And the conversation was only beginning. 3 weeks after the incident at LAX, Olivia sat in her San Francisco office reviewing the quarterly performance metrics. Harrington BioMedical had successfully transferred every shipment to alternative carriers. The transition had been seamless. Patients had received their treatments. Surgeries had proceeded on schedule. The system had adapted and evolved. Catherine entered with a tablet in hand, her trademark red glasses perched on her nose. "The media storm is finally dying down," she reported, dropping into a chair with her customary lack of ceremony. "Though you've received another dozen speaking requests, Harvard Business School wants to develop a case study." Olivia shook her head. "Decline them all. This isn't about publicity." "I thought you might say that." Catherine smiled. "Which is why I accepted only one invitation." She handed Olivia a formal card. "Mount Sinai. Dr. Sharma is hosting a small reception for Sophia Martinez and her family. The girl is being discharged tomorrow. They've asked if you would attend." Olivia stared at the card, unexpected emotion tightening her throat. "This isn't protocol. We don't interact with recipients." "No," Catherine agreed. "But sometimes protocols need to evolve too. This one is personal, Olivia. You made it personal the moment you grounded that plane." After a long moment, Olivia nodded. "Tell them I'll be there." The next day, Olivia stood in a brightly decorated hospital room. Colorful paper chains hung from the ceiling. A banner read, "Happy New Heart Day, Sophia." The 7-year-old girl sitting up in bed looked pale but alert, her dark eyes curious as Olivia entered. Dr. Anna Sharma made the introduction. "Sophia, this is Dr. Harrington. She's the one who made sure your new heart arrived safely." Sophia studied Olivia with the unfiltered directness of a child. "You don't look like a doctor. Where's your white coat?" Olivia smiled genuinely. "I'm a different kind of doctor. I don't fix people. I make sure the doctors who fix people have everything they need exactly when they need it." Sophia considered this. "So you're like the doctor's helper. Something like that." Sophia's mother, Elena Martinez, stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Dr. Harrington, I don't know how to thank you. Dr. Sharma told us what happened, how the heart almost didn't make it. How you personally made sure it did. I was just doing my job." "Mrs. Martinez?" Olivia replied softly. "No," Elena said firmly. "What you did went far beyond a job. You fought for my daughter when you didn't even know her. That's not business. That's humanity." Olivia felt an unfamiliar tightness in her chest. In her single-minded mission to build perfect systems that prevented failure, she sometimes lost sight of the human lives at the end of those systems. But here in this room with this living, breathing child whose heart beat because of decisions she had made, the human impact was undeniable. Sophia held out a handmade card. "I made this for you. Mom helped with the spelling." Olivia accepted the card. On the front was a crayon drawing of a heart with wings. Inside, in wobbly children's handwriting, "Thank you for helping my heart fly to me. Love, Sophia." For a woman who had built her reputation on unflappable composure, the emotion that swept through Olivia in that moment was startling. She carefully tucked the card into her bag. Thank you, Sophia. This means a lot to me. As she left the hospital room, Olivia found herself standing by the window of the pediatric wing, looking out over the city. Dr. Sharma joined her. You know, Anna said quietly, when they told me there was a problem with the heart transport, I nearly called off the prep. In 20 years of transplant surgery, I've learned that logistical hiccups usually cascade into failures. But when I heard it was your company handling it, and that you were personally overseeing the solution, I kept the team ready, because I knew if anyone could pull off a miracle, it would be Olivia Harrington. Olivia turned to her. It wasn't a miracle, Anna. It was preparation, redundant systems, contingency protocols. Anna smiled knowingly. The best miracles usually are. But don't discount the human element, Olivia. Your systems worked because you built them with the understanding that human lives hang in the balance. That kind of clarity is rare in corporate America. It shouldn't be, Olivia replied. Not when the stakes are this high. As she walked through the hospital corridors past rooms filled with patients whose lives hung in delicate balance, Olivia felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Horizon Air incident hadn't just been about prejudice or corporate accountability. It had been about ensuring that systems served people, not the other way around. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Horizon Air had just announced a comprehensive restructuring of its corporate culture, including the appointment of a chief inclusion officer, reporting directly to the CEO, and mandatory prejudice prevention certification for all customer-facing staff. The stock had begun to recover, though it remained well below pre-incident levels. Olivia scanned the article with detached interest. Horizon's transformation, if genuine, would be a positive development for the industry. But her company had already moved on. The world kept turning. Systems evolved, and at the center of it all, a 7-year-old girl with a new heart would now have a chance at life. That, Olivia reflected, was the only metric that truly mattered. Sophia Martinez's video had indeed gone viral, amassing over 3 million views within the first 24 hours. The stark contrast between Olivia's calm demeanor and Patricia's dismissive attitude had struck a chord with viewers transcending the usual ephemeral outrage cycle of social media. Major news outlets picked up the story first as a business catastrophe. Horizon Air loses billions. After gate agents' discriminatory behavior, then as a cultural inflection point. The true cost of bias. How one moment of discrimination bankrupted an airline. Business schools scrambled to develop case studies on what was now being called the Harrington method, a masterclass in consequence-driven leadership. Civil rights organizations cited it as evidence that economic power properly wielded could create accountability where laws alone had failed. Critics called it disproportionate, claiming Olivia had weaponized her corporate influence over a minor slight. Financial analysts debated whether Horizon Air could survive what was now being called the dignity default. This is classic cancel culture, declared one financial commentator on a popular business network. One mistake by a low-level employee and an entire company gets destroyed. No, countered his colleague. This is consequence culture. For too long, companies have treated bias as a PR problem, not a business risk. Harrington just demonstrated that it's both. The debate split largely along predictable lines. Conservative media figures decried Olivia's actions as an overreaction, with some even suggesting racial motivations in reverse, that she had targeted Horizon Air because it was predominantly white. Liberal outlets praised her for taking a stand against everyday discrimination. But there was a third perspective emerging from business leaders and analysts, that Olivia's actions weren't political at all, but purely operational. If your supplier consistently delivered damaged goods, you'd find a new supplier, wrote one respected business columnist. Dr. Harrington simply applied the same principle to bias. It was a defect in Horizon's service, and she responded accordingly. The Wall Street Journal ran an editorial titled, "The Economics of Respect When Prejudice Becomes a Liability." Harvard Business Review followed with the Harrington Paradigm Redefining Power in Corporate America. Olivia declined all interview requests. Her only public statement released through Harrington BioMedical's communications office was characteristically brief. This wasn't about making a point. It was about protecting our mission. Meanwhile, inside the company, the incident had created a subtle but significant shift. Employees who had always respected Dr. Harrington now viewed her with a new level of admiration. The story of what had happened at LAX spread through the organization, not through official channels, but through quiet conversations over lunch and after-work drinks. She could have just flashed her credentials, one logistics coordinator remarked to a colleague. Instead, she showed them what happens when you underestimate someone based on appearance. It wasn't about revenge, another employee explained to a new hire. It was about standards. Dr. H doesn't tolerate anything that puts patients at risk, including prejudice. For many employees of color at Harrington BioMedical, the incident resonated on an even deeper level. It validated experiences many had faced but rarely seen addressed so decisively. In Olivia, they saw a leader who understood that bias wasn't just socially harmful, it was operationally dangerous. Patricia Weldon, meanwhile, had become a lightning rod in her own right. Some defended her, arguing that she was simply doing her job and had made an honest mistake. Others viewed her as the face of casual discrimination, the embodiment of biases that often go unchallenged in daily life. What few people knew was that Patricia had been devastated by the incident. She had lost not just her job, but her identity. For 18 years, she had defined herself by her role at Horizon Air. Now she was adrift, unsure of who she was or what came next. After weeks of hiding from the public eye, she made a difficult decision. She wrote a letter to Olivia Harrington, not asking for her job back or seeking forgiveness, but acknowledging the impact of her actions. "I've spent weeks blaming you," she wrote. "But the truth is, I did this to myself. I never questioned my assumptions. I never considered how they might hurt others or affect my work. I'm now in therapy confronting biases I didn't even know I had. This isn't about getting my job back. It's about making sure I never make the same mistake again, wherever I end up." Olivia read the letter carefully, then filed it away. She didn't respond directly, but she did instruct her HR department to create a discrete fund to support former employees of partners who had been affected by Protocol Obsidian. It wasn't charity, it was responsibility. The consequences had been necessary, but that didn't mean she couldn't mitigate the collateral damage. 3 months after the incident, Olivia introduced Protocol Aurora, a revolutionary industry-wide accountability framework. Unlike the destructive Protocol, Obsidian Aurora was constructive, offering partnering companies access to Harrington BioMedical's proprietary training and accountability systems. Horizon Air, under new leadership, after the board forced Ingram's resignation, became the humbled first adopter. They installed transparent complaint tracking systems on every gate agent's terminal. Each employee underwent bias recognition training developed by Olivia's team of behavioral psychologists. Anonymous quarterly assessments revealed declining incidents of profiling by 78% within the first year. But Olivia's most transformative innovation was the Dignity Index, a public scoring system that ranked transportation partners based on their treatment of all passengers, regardless of appearance. Companies scoring below a certain threshold lost access to Harrington BioMedical's lucrative shipping contracts. "This isn't about punishment," Olivia explained at the industry conference where she unveiled the system. "It's about making respect a non-negotiable business metric." The impact was immediate. Several airlines scrambled to join the initiative, branding themselves as Dignity Forward. Ticket sales surged where the Dignity Index was high. Independent watchdogs praised the transparency. A new wave of accountability began to sweep through an industry long criticized for its uneven treatment of passengers. Within a year, the Dignity Index had gone global. Airlines from Singapore to Dubai to London were implementing protocols inspired by Harrington's model. A Japanese airline added a bow, a small gesture of respect to every digital boarding pass scan regardless of what class the passenger was flying. Emirates Airlines created a staff training program explicitly based on the Harrington principles, emphasizing that dignity was the foundation of luxury, not its accessory. Frank Morales wasn't fired, at least not immediately. Instead, he was reassigned to Horizon's Dignity Initiative team, where his first-hand experience with catastrophic failure made him an unexpectedly effective advocate for change. "I used to define professionalism by appearance," he would tell new employees during orientation. "Now, I define it by behavior." Marcus watched all of this unfold with growing appreciation for his boss's strategic vision. What had seemed like a reactive decision in the heat of the moment, the activation of Protocol Obsidian, had actually been the first step in a larger transformation she had been contemplating for years. "You planned this," he realized aloud during a strategy meeting. "Not the incident itself, but the response. You were waiting for the right catalyst." Olivia's slight smile confirmed his suspicion. "Change rarely happens voluntarily, Marcus. Systems resist transformation until the cost of maintaining the status quo exceeds the cost of evolution. Patricia Weldon simply tipped that balance." The Dignity Index quickly expanded beyond airlines to other transportation sectors. Train systems, rideshare companies, even cruise lines began adopting its framework. Consumer advocacy groups embraced it as a tool for holding companies accountable, not just for their prices and services, but for how they treated human beings. 6 months after its introduction, the Harvard Business Review published a comprehensive analysis of companies that had adopted the Dignity Index. The findings were clear. Organizations that prioritized respectful treatment showed higher employee retention, better customer loyalty, and most tellingly for the business world, superior profit margins compared to their peers. The Harrington effect, as economists began calling it, demonstrated that treating people with dignity wasn't just morally right, it was financially sound. Companies with high Dignity Index scores weathered public relations challenges more effectively and recovered from setbacks more quickly than their lower-scoring counterparts. For Olivia, however, the true measure of success wasn't in the business metrics or the media coverage. It was in the letters that began arriving at Harrington BioMedical's headquarters, stories from people who had experienced discrimination while traveling and now found themselves treated with new respect by companies desperate to maintain their Dignity Index scores. "For the first time in my 30 years of flying," wrote one elderly black woman, "I was offered assistance without having to beg for it. The gate agent looked me in the eye and called me ma'am. Small things, perhaps, but revolutionary to someone who has been invisible for so long." Another letter came from a young father. "My son uses a wheelchair. We've always dreaded flying because of the dismissive treatment we receive. Yesterday, on a Horizon Air flight of all airlines, the crew treated him like a valued passenger, not a logistical inconvenience. Whatever you did to change their culture, thank you." Olivia kept these letters in a folder on her desk. They were the human consequence of her decision at LAX, not the punitive aftermath that had cost Patricia her job and Horizon Air billions, but the constructive transformation that was quietly reshaping how people experienced the world. The true test of power, she told her executive team during their annual retreat, isn't in how dramatically you can destroy what doesn't work. It's in how effectively you can build what does. As she spoke, her silver watch caught the light, the timepiece that had witnessed both her greatest failure and now perhaps her greatest triumph. 6 months later, Olivia sat in a conference room at Mount Sinai Hospital. Across from her was Dr. Anna Sharma and a now healthy 7-year-old Sophia Martinez breathing easily with her new heart. Sophia wanted to thank the person who saved her life, Dr. Sharma explained. The little girl looked at Olivia curiously. "My mom says you're really important and powerful." Olivia smiled. "What do you think power is, Sophia?" The girl thought for a moment. Being able to do whatever you want. No, Olivia said gently. Real power is making sure others can't stop you from doing what's right. As they left the hospital, Marcus noticed Olivia watching families entering and exiting ordinary people in a world that often judged them too quickly and listened too rarely. That's why you didn't tell Patricia who you were, he realized aloud. Because most people can't text a message that grounds an airline. Exactly. Olivia nodded. I didn't use Protocol Obsidian because I was personally offended. I used it because if Patricia could dismiss me with all my privilege and resources, imagine who else was being silenced. She paused, watching a young mother juggling a stroller and hospital paperwork. We didn't just save Sophia that day, she said quietly. We created consequences for a system that would have happily continued ignoring everyone who didn't look important enough to respect. As they walked to their waiting car, Olivia's phone buzzed with an alert. The newly established Dignity Index had just released its first industry ratings. Horizon Air, under its new leadership and reformed practices, had climbed from last place to third. Progress wasn't perfect, but it was measurable. And in Olivia Harrington's world, that was the only metric that truly mattered. The encounter with Sophia had affected Olivia more deeply than she had anticipated. For years, she had maintained a careful professional distance from the human impact of her work. Patients were statistics, outcomes were metrics. Success was measured in delivery percentages and viability rates. It was easier that way, cleaner, less emotionally complicated. But Sophia's handmade card had breached that carefully constructed wall. Now, as she looked out the car window at the bustling New York streets, Olivia found herself noticing individual people in a way she rarely had before, wondering about their stories, their struggles, the invisible battles they might be fighting against systems that weren't built for them. You're quieter than usual, Marcus observed as they headed to the airport for their return flight. Just thinking, Olivia replied. Then after a moment, do you remember when you asked me if I felt bad for Patricia? Marcus nodded. I've been reconsidering my answer, she admitted. Not the decision itself that was necessary, but I've been thinking about the human cost, not just to Patricia, but to everyone caught in systems that reward bias and punish those who don't fit predetermined molds. Including yourself, Marcus ventured. Olivia gave him a thoughtful look. Her silver watch caught the light as she adjusted her sleeve. I've been fortunate. My intellect and determination gave me the tools to build my own system rather than fighting to belong in someone else's. Not everyone has that luxury. Is that why you created the Dignity Index, to give others the power you've built for yourself? In a way, she acknowledged. Power concentrated in one person, even with the best intentions, is still just benevolent autocracy. True transformation happens when the mechanisms of accountability become embedded in the system itself. Marcus considered this. So it's not about punishing individual acts of prejudice. It's about changing the environments that foster them. Exactly. Patricia Weldon wasn't born looking at black women in joggers and thinking not first class. She was trained to think that way by years of subtle cues, corporate culture, and societal messages. Firing her addressed a symptom, not the cause. The Dignity Index attacks the root. As their car pulled up to the private terminal, Olivia noticed something different. The staff greeted her with the same professional courtesy they always had, but there was a new awareness in their eyes, a recognition that went beyond her status as a frequent private flyer. Word had spread. The story had become legend. She was no longer just Dr. Olivia Harrington, CEO of a successful biomedical logistics company. She was the woman who had grounded an airline with a text message. The woman who had transformed an industry with a single act of calculated consequence. It was a legacy she had never sought, but one she would use to continue building a world where respect wasn't contingent on appearance, where dignity wasn't a luxury afforded only to those who looked the part, Applications to Harrington BioMedical increased by 400% in the 6 months following the incident. What caught Olivia's attention wasn't the volume, but the demographic shift, predominantly women, people of color, and candidates from non-traditional backgrounds. Why Harrington BioMedical became the most common interview question. The answers varied but carried the same essence. Because you stand for something. Because dignity matters here. Because I want to work for a company that values respect as much as results. Olivia hadn't sought publicity from the Horizon Air incident, but the quiet power she demonstrated had resonated far beyond the corporate world. She had inadvertently created something more valuable than a medical logistics company. She had built a blueprint for accountability in a system that too often rewarded complicity with prejudice. The company culture evolved as well. Employees began speaking up more readily about inefficiencies and potential problems, knowing that their observations would be valued rather than dismissed. The hierarchy flattened as people at all levels felt empowered to contribute ideas and raise concerns. Catherine noticed another change. Olivia herself had become more accessible. The CEO, who had once been known for her brilliant but somewhat detached leadership style, now made time for more personal connections. She learned names, asked about families, showed interest in the humans behind the roles. "You've changed," Catherine observed during one of their weekly strategy meetings, her red glasses perched on the edge of her nose as she studied her friend. "Have I?" Olivia asked, genuinely curious. "You're still focused on excellence and precision," Catherine explained. "But there's a new dimension to how you approach it. It's like you've expanded your definition of what matters." Olivia considered this. "Perhaps I've finally understood that human variables aren't simply obstacles to be engineered around. They're essential components of any truly resilient system." This philosophy began to influence Harrington BioMedical's approach to its work. While maintaining its rigorous standards and technological innovation, the company began incorporating more human-centered design principles into its processes and products. The results were impressive. Error rates declined further. Delivery success rates reached new highs. Employee satisfaction scores broke company records. And the bottom line reflected this success. Quarterly profits exceeded projections by 22%. Other CEOs began reaching out to Olivia seeking insight into the Harrington method. How had she created such alignment between ethical principles and business success? How had she transformed a crisis into an opportunity? She declined most of these overtures, but did agree to speak at the prestigious Allen Conference, where leaders from technology, medicine, and finance gathered annually to discuss the future of their industries. Her speech was characteristically concise, but powerful. The business world has long operated on the assumption that there's an inevitable trade-off between doing what's right and doing what's profitable, she told the audience. But that's a false dichotomy born of short-term thinking. In the long run, organizations that build respect and dignity into their operational DNA don't just feel better, they perform better. She paused, scanning the room of powerful executives. The question isn't whether you can afford to prioritize human dignity. The question is whether you can afford not to. The speech received a standing ovation and was widely shared across business media. But for Olivia, the most meaningful response came from an unexpected source, Patricia Weldon. The former gate agent sent a handwritten letter to Harrington BioMedical's headquarters. It read in part, "I lost my job because of how I treated you, and at first I was angry and blamed you. But as I've watched the changes at Horizon and throughout the industry, I've come to understand what really happened that day. You didn't destroy my career. You exposed a flaw in the system that I had become a part of. I'm now working in a different field, and I carry the lesson with me: never judge someone's value by their appearance. Thank you for what you've taught me, albeit in the hardest possible way." Olivia read the letter several times. There was no request for forgiveness, no plea for help, just an acknowledgement of growth born from consequence. She placed it in the same folder where she kept Sophia's card and the other letters from people affected by the changes she had set in motion. The folder was labeled simply, "Why It Matters." 1 year to the day after the incident at LAX, Olivia stood at the window of her San Francisco office looking out at the bay. The morning fog was just beginning to lift, revealing glimpses of the Golden Gate Bridge, a testament to human ingenuity and vision. Marcus entered with her daily briefing materials. "The 1-year media retrospectives have started," he reported. "Most are surprisingly thoughtful. They're calling it the Harrington Revolution in corporate accountability." Olivia smiled slightly. "Revolutions are messy, bloody affairs. What we did was more like evolution accelerated by necessity, but evolution nonetheless." Speaking of evolution, Marcus continued, "The Dignity Index quarterly results are in. 17 of the 20 major airlines now score above 85%. Horizon Air is at 92%, second place overall, and passenger reports of discriminatory treatment down 64% industry-wide. Even more significant, when incidents do occur, they're addressed immediately 97% of the time, rather than dismissed or buried." Olivia nodded with satisfaction. "That's the real victory. Not that prejudice has been eliminated, that's a much longer journey, but that it's no longer ignored." She turned from the window to face her assistant, who had grown considerably in confidence and insight over the past year. "You know, Marcus, people often misunderstand power. They think it's about force, about bending others to your will. But that's just coercion dressed in expensive clothes." "What is it then?" he asked, adjusting his glasses, a habit that had become less frequent as his confidence grew. "True power is the ability to create environments where the right thing happens naturally, where dignity isn't a luxury but a baseline expectation." She gestured to the city below. "Look at how people move through the world, some with confidence, others with constant vigilance. The difference often isn't what they carry in their wallets, but what they carry in their minds, the knowledge of whether the system will treat them fairly." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "And that's what the Dignity Index changes, the system itself, not just individual behaviors." "Exactly." Olivia picked up her tablet, ready to move on to the day's business. "The true measure of what we started that day at LAX isn't in stock prices or media coverage. It's in all the confrontations that will never happen, all the people who will be seen and respected without having to prove they deserve it." Later that afternoon, Olivia attended the official launch of Harrington BioMedical's newest innovation, a revolutionary organ preservation system that extended viability times by over 300%. As she delivered her remarks to the assembled medical professionals and press, she wore the same style of simple gray joggers and black shirt that she had worn that fateful day at LAX. It wasn't a coincidence or a statement for the media. It was a personal reminder that power didn't come from appearance or attire. It came from integrity, from vision, and from the courage to stand firm when it would be easier to bend. As she concluded her presentation, a notification appeared on her phone. The Dignity Index had just been adopted by its 100th major corporation, this time a hospital system. The revolution she had sparked was spreading beyond transportation into healthcare hospitality and beyond. Her fingers brushed against her silver watch, the timepiece that had witnessed both her greatest failure and now her greatest triumph. Its steady tick-tick-tick was no longer just a reminder of time's relentless forward march, but of something more profound, that small moments of choice could ripple outward into waves of change. 1 year later, as she stood in her simple gray joggers looking out at the city, her silver watch caught the light, a silent reminder that dignity isn't given by those with power, but claimed by those with courage. And in business, as in life, when that dignity is denied, the debt incurred can be catastrophic. This story is a powerful lesson that prejudice, no matter how small or casual, can have consequences that ripple through careers, companies, and even the stock market. Have you ever witnessed someone being dismissed because of how they looked? What was your response? Was it to comfort, to confront, or to change the system itself? The most powerful lesson from Olivia Harrington isn't that she had the means to ground an airline. It's that she understood her responsibility to use that power to protect those who couldn't. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of consequence and transformation. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss our next video. Remember, real change begins when we refuse to accept that things must stay as they are. Thank you for watching.